Welcome to the Bookish Hour with your hosts, Sarah E. Burr and J.C. Kenney. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Welcome to the Bookish Hour. I am one of your co-hosts, Sarah Burr, and I am joined this evening by the wonderful Heather Weidner. We're so excited for Heather to be here this evening. My co-host, J.C. Kenney, is going to be joining us shortly, so this will be a fun, the Bookish Hour on the Move episode. So thank you all of our viewers for joining us. Hello to Mark and Claudia who have already popped into the chat. Thank you guys for being here this evening. We've got a super fun show lined up to chat all things cozy mystery because Heather is also one of our fellow authors who we share a literary agent, which is exciting, as well as a publisher. So Heather and I are connected in very many different ways, and we're so excited for her to be here this evening. Heather, would you like to give our viewers just a quick introduction to your writing and your latest book that you're here to talk about?
Oh, thank you. Hi, I'm Heather Weidner. I have been a mystery fan since Scooby-Doo and Nancy Drew.
Oh.
I'm also a cops kid, so I thought everybody talked murder and mayhem. I didn't realize that was not dinner conversation. But anyway, that's okay. And I write two cozy series, Vintage Trailers and Blackmailers. That's the one we're going to talk about tonight. That is part of the Jules Keene Glamping Mysteries. And then I have a brand new series, the Mermaid Bay Christmas Shop Mysteries. And they come out in January. So that series starts. And then I have a whole Private Eye series. So we may have a surprise for you later.
Ooh,
we
yes.
have a chance to talk about the Private Eye.
That's awesome. The fact that, talking around the dinner table about murder and mayhem, I just growing up, I mean, I was obsessed with Nancy Drew. Absolutely love her. She's my role model, my icon, and I was always just talking about, her adventures and what she was doing. And my poor parents are like, does she know that this is not real? It is like, does she understand that this is a fictional character and that it's, it's great to have an imagination. But I was totally like gung-ho about Nancy Drew, and as well as Scooby-Doo. So I'm curious to see, Heather, how you got your start, because you do write several different mystery series, how you got your start writing and then writing mysteries as the genre, your chosen genre.
Well, I've been a writer for a long, long time. And during my day gig, I'm an IT manager, but I started out as a tech writer. Mm-hmm. So I've done nonfiction for a long, long time. And I have always loved mysteries, and I have dabbled with that. I'm from Virginia. I grew up in Virginia Beach, and I live in Midlothian, which is in the central part of the state now. And I just write where I know. And it's amazing, especially with the cozies. You can come up with all kinds of murder weapons and all kinds of scenarios. And my dad is a retired police officer. He was on the force for 46 years. But he's still my best resource because they're just things you don't want to Google.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you don't want that on your search history.
No. Daddy, how big a hole will this gun do? And what happens if the body's submerged for 4 days? And he's great at answering things like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was one thing that I noticed right away when reading Vintage Trailers and Blackmailers. Oh, and it looks like we've got Jim popping in. Hey, Jim. We are live on the Bookish Hour. And you've got a medal. Congratulations.
Yes. And I've got my major award.
Perfect. Excellent. Well,
can you all hear me okay?
We can, yes.
Is the background noise too much?
Not too much.
Okay.
Awesome. Heather and I were just talking about her getting her start in mystery writing and how her father, who was a cop, has really been like her greatest resource. And I was making a comment about the fact that when I was reading your kind of opening scenes of vintage trailers and blackmailers, that the forensics that was happening inside the cozy mystery scene was extremely well done in that I believed it, as well as it wasn't as like I guess it wasn't too technical. Sometimes like it can be very technical. So I was curious to see like how you balanced that out.
That might actually be the technical writer in me, because
Mhm.
I've had to translate IT for years, and you always have to take a technical concept and kind of make it mainstream or plain English. And I try to do that because I want to make sure that it's believable and it's plausible. But again, I'm not a Patricia Cornwell or someone who has a medical background or a forensics background. So, but I do have my police officer friends and sometimes some doctor friends kind of read pieces and parts of it to make sure it's realistic and plausible.
Yeah,
Because you
no.
don't want anybody to go, oh, that never happened.
Exactly. And that was one thing that I was like, wow, that it captured my attention in a way that's like, sometimes you don't see forensics really play out in cozy mysteries. So I think that was very well done in an engaging way and like sets everybody up for the ride ahead. And I just want to send a quick shout out to some of our other folks who have joined in the chat. We've got Chelsea, welcome. Karina, welcome. And of course, Mark, yes, I would like to believe that Nancy Drew is real. And I mean, she is very much so. She's in everything that I do. So definitely agree with you there. Heather, why don't you set the stage for our audience about the kind of the where we meet Jules Keene when we're introduced to her in Vintage Trailers and Blackmailers.
Her parents owned a campground, a traditional campground in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, which is outside of Charlottesville. I made up the town because you don't want to have a whole lot of murders happening somewhere. So they're all fiction, but the place it is a real place.
Mm-hmm.
And she's trying to keep her business afloat. I mean, it's tough being, especially after a pandemic and all things are just, it's a crazy world. So before her father passed away, they purchased about 40 old beat up trailers and they saved them from the scrap heap and they refurbished them. And she used her interior decorating design to refurbish them and give them a theme. There's one that's a Barbie theme and it's in pink and high fashion. There's an Elvis trailer. There's a James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause. There's a Lucy and Desi long trailer. So, I mean, there's just all of these. And it is a wonderful little campground that people can come to and glamp, which is my kind of camping. My husband goes on these trips where he hangs his food in the trees and he's like, do you want to go? And I'm like, no. No, it has to have a door and it has to have a bathroom. And yeah. So the glamorous camping was exciting. And her boyfriend is the maintenance guy at the resort. And he wants to start a new project, he's into tiny houses. So he starts building tiny houses and they have those for rent for people that want to try the experience of living in 400 square feet.
Mm-hmm. That would be hard for me.
Me too.
just up front. But no, the trailers and the descriptions of the trailers in are just so cute, and you must have had so much fun coming up with the different themes. Because as you were saying, there are so many of them, and I was curious, do you have a favorite one in existence, or do you have one in mind that you're like, oh, I should have had like this type of trailer, or which one was like, if I'm staying here, this is the trailer that I'm renting?
I think the Barbie one that would be my favorite, but it's whatever I'm writing at the time. And if I get a good idea, then I just add a new trailer. I have her, she refurbishes. But the tiny houses all have reading themes. There's a Beatrix Potter, and there's J.K. Rowling with the Harry Potter. So there's a secret place under the staircase as a reading nook. And the L. Frank Baum, the Wizard of Oz one, has a revolving bookcase. And all the books on one side are black and white and gray. And then when you flip it, they're in color. So I'm paying homage to the movie because that's like my favorite movie of all time.
That's very, very cool. I know when I was reading, the one that stood out to me the most was it was like the Royal Palace. And I was like, oh, I'd love to stay there. Our scene is set in Fern Valley. We have Jules. She's running I think, wasn't it like 50 some acres of the resort? So it's this big endeavor that she is running with her aunt Roxanne. And would you like to kind of tease how these women find themselves in the middle of a murder investigation?
She's struggling day to day on keeping the resort full, keeping it busy, keeping customers happy. And she hears a scream. She's out wandering around the property, just checking on things. And two of her senior geriatric birders, they're out bird watching, they trip over a body in the woods, and he's wearing only a red satin thong. And he turns out to be their crabby guest. He's a long-term guest who says he's writing a book and he doesn't want to be disturbed. So not only does she have this resort and all these guests, now she has a dead body in the woods. And she's got to figure out what happened before it ruins her business.
And I thought, me being like the tech social media person that I claim to be, I thought that the way that technology was utilized in this was very well done. And, how Emily, the woman that she has working at her front desk, is, managing her social media, and they're like all trying to like keep the drama that's going on under wraps. I'm curious, like, how does the small town community of Fern Valley affect Jules and her ability to kind of keep a lid on things?
It's her home base, so that is always her happy place because she's lived at college and she was married and divorced, and that didn't go well. So Fern Valley is always her safe spot. But it has got some characters, and there is a grapevine of gossip that it cannot be beat. It's faster than anything on social media. And the town has different factions. There's the people that are a little more progressive and they want to invest in business and bring in tourists. And then there's the group that wants it to be the way it was 20 years ago and don't bring those criminals to our town. And they blame her for it. I mean, she's trying to bring business to the local merchants and the restaurants and the shops. And there's a group that just wants her to stop.
I can see how that is going to kind of maybe carry into book 2, book 3 of the series, of those tensions within the town itself, which I think makes for keeping things very intriguing. We have some of our viewers. Lane is saying how a microwave needs to definitely be involved in her camping experience. We have David saying hello. And so what I'd like that Lane brought up the microwave as being a part of camping and or glamping. Tell us how glamping became the focus or the theme of Jules's pursuit, rather than just having a big campground. Why did she target this particular market, and why did you find it interesting to write about?
I think all of the characters that have cool jobs, there are things that I might like to try at some point. And glamping just sounds like so much fun. I mean,
have you gone, did you get to do research by going glamping yourself?
Seeing the trail. I haven't actually been in a long time. So the worldwide pandemic hit in the middle of this.
That's true.
So we're slowly rolling back out. But Virginia has so many, and the people were so very kind in offering their time and answering my questions. I mean, there's one resort that just has yurts.
Oh, yep.
the very large tents. There's one that has tree houses, and she's going to get a tree house later in one of the other episodes.
Oh, that's fun.
So it has so things that I would love to have in my backyard. So, and I am not a rough kind of girl. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying, my wife and I have talked. We used to do the camping with the sea back when we were kids. And by kids, I mean like Sarah's age. But now we're, it's like, we thought if we're ever going to do it again, we got to do the glamping thing. And I could do the yurt. I don't know if Nancy would be willing to do the yurt, but if it ever happens, I'll let you know how it goes.
They have some really fabulous, and they go all out. I mean, wine chillers and posh beds and huge showers. And I'm thinking, how do you get that in a small camper?
It's
but
funny.
They do.
The what Jim was talking about, camping, for me, as I guess, and I don't know if it's a main thing or if it's just like a my family thing, but for us, camping meant going to camp, which was, just like a tiny little cabin on a lake. And so when people are like, oh yeah, like, I went camping this weekend and didn't have a bathroom, I'm like, why wouldn't you have a cabin? Like, why wouldn't your cabin like have a bathroom or like an outhouse or something? But it's like, there are so many different variations of camping that we have, grown to accommodate over the years as humans have become more used to the finer things in life. So it was really fun to read about, just how welcoming and warm and cozy each of the trailers were. And it just must have been so much fun coming up with those themes.
Oh, it really was. My aunt and uncle owned a campground in Nelson County, which is outside of Charlottesville. It's up at Crabtree Falls. And that was my first camping experience as a small child. And it was just magical. There was a stream and pinball machines, and there was just a game room.
Yep.
Just, we got to eat out, camp, make dinner over a fire. And, it was still, that's always the love of the travel and the excitement. So that's where the campground started. That was the idea. So it's modeled on that. And that campground is still there. I've not been in years. It's been 30 years.
So we've talked a little bit about Jules and her boyfriend Jake, but there's somebody else who's very important in Jules's life, and I want to make sure that I'm saying her name correctly. Is it Bijou? Let's talk about Bijou, because I love a dog, and Bijou is just the sweetest little thing to read about. And I feel like there are a lot of cozy mystery lovers when they're like, there's a dog in this book, I need to read it. So tell us about Bijou.
She is a spunky little Jack Russell Terrier. She's white and brown, and she's based on, we have a pair of Jacks at home. They're brother and sister. And so it's based on her. So Riley thinks I should write another series with him in it. So we'll do that later. But she helps find some things through the novels. You'll see her sniff out things, or she's a very good judge of character. So that we have some folks that are not so nice, and she's not real fond of them. So, yeah. And then Bijou runs the place. I mean, she's in all the social media, and she greets everybody that comes through the door. So. And I was so excited they put her on the cover. So I'm like, she's in the camper in the corner.
That's interesting you bring that up, because I was not long ago, I was watching one of the BritBox adaptations of one of Agatha Christie's Poirot novels. And for the life of me, I apologize, I can't think of the name of the story, but I think it may be Dumb Witness, which, by today's standards, that's not a very nice title, but basically the key witness in the story was a dog.
It was a dog. I love it.
Yes, and it was just really, really cool then how, kind of to your point, Heather, how, dogs, especially dogs. I mean, you all know me. I'm a cat lover, but I got to admit it, in this case, dogs are so much more, they're wonderful to begin with, but they interact with humans so much more in an authentic way that they really can be. I don't think it's just for fiction. I think they really can be so key in helping identify, who's a good guy, who's a bad guy. And so I think that's really cool. Hats off to Bijou.
Yeah, and she'll break the tension sometimes. If it's a really tense scene, she'll do something humorous, or she's always snacking, always trying to eat, or nap. She naps lots of time.
I think a good scene that really kind of like solidified her status in just not only in Jules's world, but just like in everybody in Fern Valley was when I think it's either the sheriff comes in, he's like, I need to like take over your office and interview people. And Jules is like, oh, well, Bijou's in there. He's like, oh, that's fine. The dog can stay. and it's like, oh, like you're interviewing suspects in a murder, yet like, oh, we could have the little dog in here. So I thought that was a really fun, as well as like telling scene about just kind of like the warmth that she brings. So Heather, you had mentioned that, so had you written a majority of this during kind of the lockdown, or was it something you'd been working on beforehand and then had to flesh out during lockdown, or what was the kind of the actual writing process of bringing book one to life?
I hadn't started it, but it was wrapping it up, and then the pandemic hit.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought, oh, it's only going to be 2 or 3 weeks. It'll be fine. We'll be back to normal. And I wrote all 3 books in that series. So book 2 is Film, Crews, and Rendezvous. Wow. And that comes out in October. And then next year, Christmas Lights and Cat Fights comes out. So that's the third one in the series.
Such great titles. I like, I cannot not say Vintage Trailers and Blackmailers without like doing like a little shimmy, just because it just like has such a nice flow to it. And I think so the fact you wrote all 3 books in the series, kudos, congratulations on being able to do that. I know that it's interesting to hear like different perspectives that writers had during the pandemic, because some people were like, I can't write, I have like a mental block, or I just wasn't feeling inspired. But then other people are like, everything opened up for them, and I'm glad to hear that that you had time to write. And I'm curious, when you started writing book 1, did you know like what was going to be happening in book 3, or like how did the series process, and maybe like if it's different than what you've done before, because you also write your PI series. I'm curious to see like how that experience differed, and if it was more challenging, or if it was easier, or just different.
This one is a little bit sweeter and a little bit tamer. The PI series is a little bit edgier.
Mm-hmm.
Not terribly. I mean, it's not anything that anybody would go, oh, that's rated R. It's not. But I work in IT, and I usually work 40, 50, 60 hours a week. So I have to segment everything in my life. I get up at 5 and I write till 7:30, and then go to work. And then sometimes I'll proofread at lunch. And then if I don't hit my word count, then I come back at night and catch up. But I decided during the pandemic that my commute is about 2 hours a day, both ways. It's like 35 in the morning and an hour and something in the afternoon because traffic's terrible. But so I said, all right, my commute and my lunchtime, I'm going to dedicate that every single day to writing. And it was over 3 years. Mm-hmm. So it was amazing. I got the 3 of this series finished. I finished the 3 in the Mermaid Bay series and a couple of short stories.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow. So that's my proof. If I outline and I write every day, so that's about 2 hours, maybe 3 hours a day. Mm-hmm. I became very productive quickly.
So when you say your commute, did you dictate then? When you talk about,
no, because we were working from home. So
okay, I see.
The time that I would normally drive, I said, okay, those 2 hours and lunch are going to be time.
Gotcha. That's a bonus. Yeah. Wow, though. I mean, that is extremely disciplined schedule. Wow. The fact that your brain is functioning at 5 o'clock in the morning to write something is the most amazing thing that I think I've heard in a really long time.
I'm just one of those weird people that I'm fine at 4:35 in the morning,
Oh
but
gosh.
call me at 9:30 or 10 and say,
Mm.
tomorrow.
Oh man, Heather, I'm good from like 11 a.m. until like 4 o'clock in the afternoon,
Oh, there
and
you
that's
go.
it. Like right now, the fact that I'm like able to communicate effectively with you is probably the most like amazing thing that I've accomplished this week. So
But if
I
I'm not that structured, I goof off because there are times when I'll take a week off or some days to
Mhm.
write, and I play and I watch TV or I read a book, and then all of a sudden it's 3 o'clock and I haven't hit my word count.
Mm.
So if I know that I have to stick to that, I have to go to work at 7:30.
So is word count your way of kind of like keeping track of your progress, or do you have days where it's like you write 1,500 words and then delete 1,400 of them?
Yeah, I try not to on the first draft.
Hmm.
I got that advice from the fabulous Mary Burton. Just get it on paper. Don't spend 3 years rewriting chapter 2.
Hmm.
Just get it on paper, and I outline. My outline is pretty detailed, so I can pick up. I do 1,000 words on work days, and I do between 3 and 5,000 on weekends. So.
Oh, wow.
And I just, between, besides that is tipping my hat to you for your discipline there, Heather. I think it just goes to a reminder to folks who are tuning in that, we all have our different approaches and there's not a wrong one or a right one.
You've got to find what works for you.
Yeah, and I think it is one of the things from the writer perspective that is really valuable is having a chance to hear, like what your routine is compared to Sarah's, compared to mine, because again, to me, I think the important thing is that you're doing what works for you, and there's the opportunity to say, well, this is how I do it, but other people do it different ways, and at the end of the day, what matters is you get the story down.
Mm-hmm. And my first book took 5 years to write because I kept going back and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. And then it took another 2 years to get published. So I said, wait, there's got to be a better way.
I think your point about, just getting through that first draft is something that's really very important. And I think that a lot of folks do get stuck on writing like a certain scene or a certain chapter, and it's just like keep going, get the story down, let it come together at the end, and then go in and put the time, because I think that happens. I mean, stuff that I've written and rewritten and rewritten and rewritten, it never gets finished. And so I find that bit of advice has, at least for my writing, has been really helpful. It's like just get it all down. So that's I'm curious to kind of understand a little bit more about your outlining process. But before we get into that, we have a couple more folks joining us. Ashley says hello, and Karina says hashtag author goals right there. I think in reference to your dedication and time that you put into writing a day. So with that, yes, I'd love to know. I'm always fascinated to hear how folks outline, because I do find that outlines are, I used to think that they were like, you don't need an outline to do this. But now that I have used an outline to successfully get from point A to point B, I'm like, why did I resist this for so long? Like, it was something that I was like, I'm not going to outline. Like, I'm going to do this without thinking about it. I was like, that's not the way to go about this, Sarah. So I love hearing about how people outline, because there are so many different ways to do it.
Now, I hated when in school they would say, do an outline and then I wrote the paper first and then went back and did the outline.
I was like, why do I have to write this paper twice? Like, that's,
yeah. Mine is more of a summary by chapter, and it's usually either I'm writing it out like a paragraph, or it'll be a couple of bullet points, like here's where they find the body, and this is where they find it. Now, and then I go through, and roughly 28 to 35 chapters is about the book length. So I know if I stop at chapter 20, I'm not done. I didn't hit the word count. I've got to make sure it's closer to the range. And
so at that point, sorry to interrupt, but I'm just curious. So if you, let's say that you get to the reveal on chapter 20. Now, at that point, are you like, okay, do I go back and like figure out what more I can add, or what's the process for tweaking the outline to meet those chapter needs?
Sometimes it's that. Other times I rush things because I want to get, okay, boom, here it is, and let's move on. So it's like maybe I could build some tension. So maybe we just don't end that abruptly and roll on to the next thing. Maybe there's another chapter in between that sets the stage and makes it a little more mysterious.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm curious, this could be a very controversial question. And we have Laura saying greetings in the chat. The amount of words that you have in a chapter, what's your goal when you're writing?
I don't think about it. I typically just write. Now, I do go back and look at the visual, like in Microsoft Word, I'll make it 25% of the view. Because if I've got a couple of chapters that are 3 pages and then some that are 22, I try to balance that out. I mean, it's not that they have to be the exact same word count each chapter, but I try to keep them the same. And I like short chapters. I like action. And
agreed.
I mean, I love Victorian novels, but I don't want to get bogged down in the description of the white whale or,
So I am guilty of, I try to keep my chapters around 2,500 words. And the reason why I say 2,500 words is because JC was actually the person that I asked, like, how long should my chapters be for the cozy mystery genre? Because I feel like I don't know. And there was one book that I wrote where my longest chapter was 44 pages. And I'm just curious to see if anybody out has either read a book that has a chapter that you're like, this blew my mind with how long it was, or would you guys have been writing what the longest chapter that you've found and like, ooh, I got to chop this up.
I typically do. And sometimes I'll get excited, like I'm describing something or there's some action or there's some tension. And I try to break it up where the tension is so that the reveal isn't. Sometimes it feels rushed. If it's just a thing happened, she saw it, she figured it out, she revealed it, or she put the clues together. So I try to build a little bit of tension.
Jim, what about
you? One of the things that I find that's kind of interesting is sometimes I'll be reading a book and the chapter itself seems to go on forever, but the author has broken that chapter into subparts. And shockingly, I go back to Agatha Christie. She did that a lot, but I've seen other authors do that too. So the novel itself may only be 20 or 25 chapters, but there are 3 or 4 breaks within each of those chapters, which I think is an interesting way to kind of give a little break to that story. So if you have a chapter that's 44 pages long, then, it's like you can kind of break it up a little bit.
Oh, for sure.
And I think, again, it also kind of goes back to the type of story you're writing. Because I know for example, the fabulous Hank Philby Ryan has talked that, she writes thrillers and is a fabulous storyteller. Her chapters are short, but that's the sense of urgency in that thriller that, it's like, boom, 3, 4, 5 pages, we're going to keep going because you constantly have that race against the clock. Whereas for the more traditional mystery or the cozy mystery, it's like, well, I think the reality of it is the pace is a little bit slower on purpose. And so that's why I was taught early on, 2,500 words, per chapter kind of keeps the story going. And, it allows you to get to know the people, because I think that's one of the key differences, to me at least, between, say, a traditional mystery and a thriller is, and this isn't a knock on thrillers at all, but I think, with our traditional cozy type mysteries, we tend, that kind of more leisurely pace allows us to get to know people and to get to know that community. And that's why that is so valuable, because, for example, with Heather's book, there are two more in the series. So you've introduced these folks, and then, as the next two books come out, you're already going to be familiar with them thanks to all that groundwork that you laid in the first book.
Jim, I think we're getting a little bit of R2D2 feedback on your end. Perfect. So yeah, I totally agree that like the chapter pacing is key. And Mark made a comment in the chat that 44 pages is way too long. Wholeheartedly agree. I went from having 22 chapters in the book to having, I think it was 35 because of it. So definitely the fun things that happen when you're editing. But it was funny because so many people had already read it and reviewed and read the book and all that good stuff, edited, what have you. And it was like, I caught it just as we were getting ready to publish. And I was like, how did this, that was a surprise. But so chapter lengths definitely, I think, create some type, they create an atmosphere in the book, which I think is really fun to play off of. Claudia, as a reader, prefers shorter chapters. I think that that's definitely my style as well when I'm reading, just because I think the shorter the chapter, Heather, you had mentioned like the pacing, the shorter the chapter, I'm like, oh, I can read just one more. Oh, I can read just one more. Oh, I can read just one more. And I think that plays to the benefit of like the readability of the book itself.
And you've got to give them a reason to keep reading and stay up past their bedtime. I mean, you just have to.
There's so many. I pride myself in trying to come up with cliffhangers for my chapters. And there are some times where I get to a chapter that's, probably 5,000 words, and it's like I have to chop this into two, and going back and like figuring out, okay, like how can I edit this to propel the story forward, to keep the scene moving, but just having that break within the set of text. So that's always fun. But I wanted to compliment you on your chapter endings, because that's one thing that I'm very aware of when I'm reading. It's like, oh, that's a good way to end it, because it definitely, you want to read more, but if you have to stop, I like do realize it's like, oh, people have lives outside of reading a book. It's shocking. I was like, what? But I think there's a fine line of like, not like totally gut punching your audience versus allowing them to go to sleep or go have dinner with their family or what have you. So I wanted to commend you on that.
Thank you. I used to tie them up in nice little neat bows that, okay, end of the day, put the book down, brush your teeth, go to bed. And somebody in my critique group said, why are you doing that? Make them stay up all night, make that crack outside, wake her up, or there's footsteps in her house and she lives alone, or something.
No, I think you hit the sweet spot. So very, very well done. Would you like to kind of tease a little bit what's happening in Christmas Crews and Rendezvous? No, that's a
Film Cruise.
It's Christmas Lights and Catfights is book 3. I know. I was like, they're already in my head. Like,
well, I was streaming a lot at the very beginning of the pandemic, so you might see some influences in there. Film Crews and Rendezvous is a show that it's very popular. I was watching Stranger Things at the time, so it's similar to that. It's called Fatal Impressions. And Fern Valley is never going to be the same. This one stoplight town, all of a sudden this film crew, these actors, everybody descends. And it's we talked about the dichotomy of the people in the town. Now you've got Hollywood, and that's a whole nother mix to this. And of course, the head writer ends up dead under one of the tiny houses, the L. Frank Baum Wizard of Oz house. And all you can see are her designer shoes with the red bottoms.
I love it. So I've said this before on the show, but I definitely am a Hollywood fan. I love
Okay.
all things celebrity. I love it when cozy mysteries incorporate celebrity aspects into the story, just because like it's like this lavish like world that like you can't even comprehend, but coming into this warm, inviting, comforting town. And I think that the dichotomy between them is always just so fascinating, and I love reading about it.
I
Um,
mean, what could go wrong?
yeah,
This is a sweet southern town. They don't like our food. They don't like the entertainment. They don't like the nightlife. And they're kind of rude. Some of them are rude. And
I can
it's a
imagine.
whole different, lots of
You know,
tension. And I
but the
kind of was watching the Tiger King during cat fights. Christmas cat fights. So, yeah, there's a
you
little
know,
bit of that.
one of the things that strikes me about that kind of setup, Heather, is that it's true. Because and this isn't a bash on Hollywood by any means, but you have different cultures, people from different parts of the country, and they have different goals. And some folks are like, okay, we're going here. I don't know anything about it. I've got a job to do. Let's get it done. And then you have other folks like, hey, this is my town. And that's a fabulous setup for tension. And I mean, I've also got to tip my hat to you that your little setup there reminded me immediately of the Wizard of Oz.
Oh, thank you. Good. I was going, and then of course they kind of make fun of it as it goes on. So it's, yes, we're nodding to the kitschiness, but
I love it.
Roxanne is her sassy aunt, and she's always making comments about the flying monkeys or the witch or something like that. So
I absolutely love Roxanne's your descriptions of her clothing, and just like I could picture her like right away. And I like would love to know more about her and how she you know came to be in this town, and when she's like this really like larger in life personality. So I'm wondering, Heather, if you could share like some, maybe just some a little snapshots about the supporting characters that Jules has around her in her first outing as an amateur sleuth.
Roxanne is her aunt. It's her father's younger sister. And so she grew up in the town as well. So she's part of the community. But she is educated. Her husband was a doctor, so she has money. And she likes designer shoes and designer bags. And she likes the nightlife. And she dates around a lot until she falls in love with the sheriff. And so there's a whole, he doesn't want Jules investigating. She's trying to support her niece. So there's some tension there.
That's a very cool take on the tension between law enforcement and the main character, because there are many cozy mysteries where it's, the lead detective and the main character have kind of a romance or chemistry between them. But to have it be through a family member, that's very that's something that I have not heard of I don't know if I've heard of it actually. So that's I like it.
Oh,
I like that. I like the twist on a cozy mystery staple.
and I grew up in a law enforcement home with a lot of law enforcement influences.
Hmm.
And I mean, what they do is incredible. I mean, I can't tell you how many of my old shoes and clothes and toys ended up with kids that needed them, or my teddy bears ended up for accident victims, because they're just generous, kind people for the most part. So I didn't want to make the law enforcement look stupid or bumbling. Now there is a bumbling detective, I mean a deputy, but that's just Bubba. And that's the way he
I
is.
loved his name too, Bubba.
But he prefers Charles now.
Yes,
That's,
yes.
that's his
That
professional
scene,
name.
that scene showed so much of his character just in that statement. And I was like, wow, like it's amazing what words can do when they are put together in a really crafty way. So that was
Oh,
another thing where, a lot of your characters, you're not wasting time telling us like who this person is in kind of an expository way. It's all displayed through dialogue and action and people's interactions with each other and people talking about other people. And so I was very, it was very immersive. And
Oh,
I
thank
think
you.
that that was extremely well done. And I also felt that you did a very good job about respecting law enforcement and the work that they do, because it is, you know, when you're having an amateur sleuth involved, like, yes, you don't want to paint a local town police force as bumbling, because it's like, well, then why wouldn't they just be fired and new people be hired, or something along the lines of like, why would the community stand for that? So it's always
Yeah.
really cool when you have a competent police force, but you also have a sleuth helping them along. And Jim, I think of Allie Cobb and working
Mhm.
with Chief Robertson, and how they have that partnership where the cops are doing their job, but your sleuth is also getting
Mhm.
involved a little bit.
And
Yeah,
see, that's Jules. She's trying to save her business, and people talk to her all the time. So she wheedles information and she snoops and asks questions. So the sheriff is always a little surprised that, oh, how'd you know that? Or who
Hmm.
told you that? Or so it's a good balance.
yeah, and I think that's one of the I don't know, I don't key points isn't the right word, but I think that's one of the things about writing the small town mystery, is that it's important to recognize that police, they have a job to do. They've been through an academy and things like that, and to the bumbling cop is an old, tired, worn out trope. And I think that it makes for much more interesting storytelling for when we have situations where it's like, oh, yeah, the police force is smart, and they're busy doing their job. And so that puts the challenge on us as writers to say, okay, you've got police that they know what they're doing and they're working this case. So how does my amateur sleuth add to that, or what can they do kind of working outside? So to your point, Heather, it's like, okay, well, especially today, it's an unfortunate reality, but people don't necessarily want to talk to the police, but they will talk to your friendly neighborhood person in town.
Mhm. And sometimes she crosses the line, or she'll step right up to the line because he would need a warrant to get into the place or to search it or have probable cause. She just grabs the maintenance caddy, knocks on the door, and says, "Maintenance, housekeeping," and she goes in.
Well, that's a little more honest than Allie. Allie has her little secret lockpick that she uses
Oh,
from
yeah.
time to time. But
Skills. It's good to have skills.
exactly. But that it also kind of is interesting, because then it kind of goes back to, for example, it makes me think of Sarah's character Coco Klein, and how she also, through her friends and contacts, is able to work with the police at the same time that she's working kind of outside. So kind of tell us a little bit how you came up with that, Sarah.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I'm working on getting Coco Klein book 2 ready to send in to my editor. And so I'm like going through like last pass, like making sure everything is, I'm everything's good. And there's a scene where the whole issue for the police at this point is that they can't locate next of kin. And without being able to locate next of kin, their hands are kind of tied into how they can proceed in the community, because the person who is killed is a reputable figure and they don't want to cause issues in their investigation before they've been able to notify next of kin. And so one of the lieutenant on the force kind of sends Coco on a little fact-finding mission of like, hey, like, can you see if you can figure out where this woman is, because we can't find her, and you have your ways. And so it's fun to kind of use our characters as they can be deployed by the police in fact-finding missions that aren't necessarily investigative in nature, but yet your heroine can take it and be like, oh, well, the police basically just asked me to help further, like, solve this case for them, so let's go and see what we can find. So that's kind of how Coco, like, twist things to work in her favor. But yeah, it's always a fine line of, you know, being on the right side of the law versus maybe stepping over the line a little bit, but it's all done with the best of intentions, so maybe things won't turn out too poorly.
And she touches evidence, and she does things that, you know, she tramples through crime scenes, and it's like she gets better as she
it's a learning process for sure. So just to, like, I can't believe it, but we're already at 10 minutes to the hour. Time is flying by, Heather. It's been absolutely amazing speaking with you this evening, but I do want to give you a chance to share a little information regarding another series with our viewers, if you're interested in that, maybe?
Sure, if you don't mind. I have a Delanie Fitzgerald series. She's a CPI that gets in way more trouble than I do, and it's set here in Central Virginia, around Richmond area. And book 4 is coming out in August, and nobody's really seen the cover except my street team. So if you'd like to show it, this group will have the first preview.
So we have a Bookish Hour exclusive, everyone. Hopefully what I'm about to do doesn't, like, make YouTube crash or doesn't cut off our stream, but in just a moment you should see the cover for Heather's new book that's coming out. So let's see if we can switch that over.
That's my wonderful wife, Nancy, behind me there.
Hi, Nancy.
She walked with me.
Oh, good for y'all. Y'all are, I admire you both.
So Heather, do you want to tell us a little bit about the upcoming book, Mail, Reviews, and Subterfuge?
Yes,
Gosh, so many good titles.
Oh, thank you. Delanie is just sassy, and she just runs into things headlong, and sometimes she puts herself in danger, or she puts herself in a funny situation. And her biggest cash-paying client, who's her biggest fan, is Chaz Smith, and he's the local strip club owner, and he is the epitome of sleaze. And the mayor died in the first book in front of his club. And so he hired her to help figure out who really killed the mayor. And so in the second book, he decides he's going to run for mayor. And so they've got this whole Make Richmond Great Again. And then when all that doesn't work out, he starts another business, which is like the Chippendale version in Richmond. And it's at the Cheeky Monkey. And so that's what you're going to see on this cover.
Our viewers got to look at it. It looks stunning. Can't wait to learn more, and hopefully have you back in the future to talk about it, and as well as the Jules's next mystery adventures. But as we do on all of our Bookish Hour episodes, to kind of bring our conversation full circle, let's talk about what we are reading and what we are watching. Jim, do you want to go first?
Sure. So as far as what I'm reading, I just started a new book by the amazing kind of thriller comic author Alex Segura, called The Secret Identity.
Oh, yes.
So, and it is, it's a story set in mid-70s New York City, which features an individual who becomes kind of a de facto superhero. So just started it, and I've been looking forward to it for a long time. If you don't know about Alex, he's an amazing writer. He's written the Pete Fernandez, Miami, Florida-based PI series, and he's also a big comic writer. So this book kind of blends the two. So that's been a lot. I just started it, looking forward to a lot of fun with that. As far as I'm watching, just started season 8 of the Brokenwood Mysteries on Acorn, and I was so excited to start that. If you have Acorn, you need to check out Brokenwood. It is a series set in New Zealand. Wonderful characters. People talk about it, compare it a lot to the Midsummer Mysteries. So it's really cool. Yeah. I also want to make a quick shout out to a podcast that I've been listening to also. If you've not heard of it, it's called The Well. and it is hosted by Anson Mount and Brandon Edges. And Brandon is a makeup guy, and Anson, you may have seen him in Hell on Wheels on AMC, and also as Captain Pike in the new Star Trek. But what's interesting about this podcast is it talks about creativity and what is the genesis of creativity in all different kinds of fields, anything from entertainment to medicine to Heather.
Oh, hopefully she's all right.
Okay. I guess Heather didn't agree with my recommendations. Heather will be back in a second, I'm sure. But yeah, so The Well is really cool because what it does is they talk to individuals who, who kind of explore the different the different starting points for how they got creative. There was a really cool one recently, and Heather's Back to Life is good, about a young man who who worked for the Los Angeles Philharmonic and started a program bringing symphonic music to Skid Row in LA. So check out The Well.
The Well.
So, yes. Sarah, how about you?
I am I'm reading, it's actually via audiobook. The title is going to be very strange when I say it out loud, but it's called The Creepypasta Collection. And it is an editor of short horror stories. I listen to scary stories before I go to bed because it makes for wonderful nighttime reading. And these ones have left me terrified. I actually might have to stop listening to them before I go to sleep because they are truly, truly horrifying and disturbing, but very, very well written.
Are they worse than Stephen King?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
Like I don't get scared that often. I love being scared, and I enjoy watching scary movies and all that stuff. But there, a couple of these stories, I've just been like, this is too much. Too much in how scary it was. So if you like scary stories, it's called The Creepypasta Collection, and I'm listening to it on audiobook, and it's absolutely delightful, but in a horrifying way. And then for viewing, we're watching the Obi-Wan limited series from Disney Plus. Absolutely love it. Seeing how it fits into the Star Wars universe, and I don't want it to end, so I'm kind of hesitant to watch. I think we're on episode 5, and it's I don't want it to end, so it's okay, we got to take a break. And because we're taking a break, I'm also watching All Creatures Great and Small on PBS Masterpiece.
Yes.
Very absolutely stunning views of the English countryside, wonderful cute little town. I do fast forward the parts when the animals are in distress because it's I need them to be safe and I need them to get to the end part. But it's very good. Highly recommend it. Heather, I hope you're all right.
I am. I'm so sorry. I have really bad allergies. And
okay. I was oh my God, I hope we don't have to
yeah, no.
I can't administer CPR over.
Yeah, Heather totally did not like my recommendation.
Oh, I did. I'm making notes. That was very good. Let's see. I bounce back and forth. I mean, I read a lot of cozies, but I'm reading a thriller right now. I went back to Patricia Cornwell.
Mm-hmm.
She was living in Richmond when we first moved here. And so that was always such a cool thrill, is to drive through and go, oh, that's the dumpster where she put the body, and that's the rest stop where the murders happened. So I'm having fun with that one. And let's see what else. What am I watching? I'm watching the second season of Only Murders in the Building.
Oh, I totally missed out that the new one was here.
Oh, it is. It is. And it's as funny or funnier than the first one.
Oh, good. Oh,
yeah.
good.
I'm really enjoying that.
Excellent. Well, I'm gonna I probably have to pause watching All Creatures Great and Small to go watch that, because it's I never want these things to end. Much like I don't want this conversation to end, but our time has flown by. We have reached the end of our hour of the Bookish Hour. Heather, it was an absolute joy to have you here. Thank you so much for stopping by and talking about vintage trailers and blackmailers. We would love to have you back. And for our viewers, thank you so much for joining us this evening. For those of you who are here live, for those of you who put all of your wonderful comments in the chat, thank you, thank you. We are doing this to connect with you, and thank you for allowing us to be a part of your evening. It's an honor. So thank you so much, Heather, for being here. Jim, for showing that we can do this on the go, which is exciting. Congratulations.
I just need to make sure I'm far. Yeah, I just need to make sure I'm far enough away from the generator so y'all can hear me without too much sound. But,
yeah, it was fine. I was like, is he with R2D2? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, but Heather, this was a real thrill, and you are brilliant. You are funny, and I also want to make a quick plug for folks to make sure you're following. If you're not, you gotta follow Heather on social media because she is the absolute queen of fun.
She's the queen of
memes that'll meanwhile. Yes.
Her memes always make a whole community of writers laugh. So Heather, thank you for always brightening up our days. Yes. Again, we would love to have you back as we talk about more of Jules's adventures. Thank you for doing your book reveal, your cover reveal this evening. I'm going to switch it over once more so our viewers can see that as we sign off. Jim and I will be back on Thursday, July 28th. With our season finale. We're going to be having the wonderful Marilyn Levinson joining us. She writes her Haunted Library Mysteries as Allison Brooke. So if you guys are fans of the Haunted Library Mysteries, we will be having Marilyn on our final show. And as we sign off to say goodnight, Heather, thank you again so much for being here. And we will see you all when we next air on July 28th. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you.